Okay, I am here with James Harvey, founder of Students Against Tyranny, and probably, I hope it doesn't mind me saying this, but one of the youngest guests that we have here on TNT. And if you don't mind, James, I know we can't see each other. I'll repeat the message that you sent to me a couple of weeks ago, asking if you could come on and have some airtime to speak out here on TNT Radio. And it said, "Hi, Darren. We are taking a sixth form college in Surrey to court for political discrimination. We are trying to raise awareness that we are fighting back. Of course, we have also had all our Twitter accounts banned from Twitter recently, so it's become increasingly difficult to get our message out there. And I myself am experiencing definitely some sort of censorship at the moment on Twitter and other social media platforms. I was wondering if I could come back on TNT at some point to talk about it. I also hold the belief that universities are ground zero for communist agendas, and want to stress how important it is that we end the radicalization program within universities. Many thanks, James." And so, James, you are here. Could you briefly, and welcome, James. It's great to have you on the show. Can you briefly just introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are? And then can you just pick up on what you're talking about with regards to political discrimination in a sixth form college in Surrey, please?
Yeah, of course. So firstly, thank you for having me on. And it's really upsetting to hear about your class as well.
Oh, it's breaking my heart, mate. I try not to get emotional, but it's so difficult, because I do literally get home and I start talking to my cat to tell him about my day and he's not here. So anyway, sorry.
I could tell a minute ago, but sorry to hear about that. So if anyone doesn't know who I am, my name is James Harvey. I am the founder of a group called Students Against Tyranny. We founded it in 2021 as with the original intention of kind of being a social group for young people, so they didn't feel the societal pressures to take the you-know-what, because a lot of them were facing pressures from their school, from the media, from the government, from their parents, from their friends. And so that's how it started. It has since transpired into an activism movement of young people who oppose institutionalized Marxism and the shutdown of free speech within universities, talking about the reason we think that universities are ground zero for communist agendas. Anyone who's looked into Marxist regimes, whether that be the Bolshevik Revolution, the Cuban Revolution, every single Marxist revolution, they always recruited the work of the students every single time. Even the Mao's Cultural Revolution, where students were told to beat up their teachers, and forms a paramilitary organization called the Red Guards. So, and it's mainly done through a process called ideological subversions, which is kind of propaganda, disseminating, they take over the student unions as well, which is something that's to do with this Surrey sixth form college that we're taking to court, which we'll talk about in a moment. So that's what Students Against Tyranny is. Recently, we were at a UKIP conference giving a talk as well on what we stand for and talking about why it's so important that we fight back against the radicalization of young people within universities, because it's a very big topic for us at the moment. But kind of expanding on what you mentioned a minute ago with us taking the sixth form college to court. So we have this student called Luca. And by the way, we have many of these students all the time who give us, who are constantly ringing us, telling us about their experiences at university, how they're being threatened by Antifa, how their teachers are conspiring against them. And a lot of them come with proof as well. Using subject access requests, you can claim the emails between the teachers and faculty about you, which is something we've all done. And it's mad to see how little they care about our future and how willing they are to conspire to have us removed from university because we have an opinion that doesn't align with the status quo. It's absolutely vile. So this guy called Luca attends sixth form college in Surrey. He's doing one of the sciences, which I know Darren used to do. Was it chemistry, wasn't it?
Apparently I'm a chemist, James. But what that really means is that I have a certificate that says I'm a chemist. And there is a difference between the two things. But I have a chemistry degree. Sorry, go on, carry on.
Yeah, well, so this student got in trouble, so they had actually punished him for multiple things. Primarily, it was transphobia and anti-Semitism. The alleged anti-Semitic comments was banter between him and a friend. Funny enough, the friend who he used to have really good banter with, her dad is actually one of the counsellors in the area who's also a tranny, is transgender. So we thought that potentially she might have told her dad this, who then pushed her in the direction of reporting him, because it was like 2 weeks after the comments were made that she reported him for anti-Semitism and transphobia. So he got in trouble for that. Now I've actually sent you the contract. So what they did was, is they what was it? They got him into a disciplinary meeting, and they basically said, right, you've got to sign this behavioral contract. Now I'm just going to pull up on this my screen so I can actually read from it exactly what was said.
Well.
If it's gonna,
it's not even... Do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, if you could read it out for me, mate.
So there's a street. I'm not going to say. Is it okay for me? Are you happy for me to say what the name of the college is?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so this is Godalming College. It is to a student called Luca. I'm not going to say what his surname is. It's a behavior contract. It says, in addition to the standard student contract, so I'm assuming all students at Godalming College get some sort of behavioral contract or agreement on how they're going to operate within the college confines. So anyway, in addition to the standard student contract reproduced in part below, it has become necessary to further clarify the seventh obligation highlighted regarding your behavior in lessons. Please also be aware that all aspects of the student contract and student code of conduct still apply. And it says, as a student, I agree to abide by the following obligations: to attend and be punctual, all timetable commitments, blah, blah, blah. That seems perfectly reasonable. Produce work that reflects my best efforts, complete all work, to always have my lanyard and student ID. Yeah, you must have your student ID with you at all time. When I was a college teacher, I spent half my time chasing after students who didn't have an orange lanyard on. To ensure mobile phones and other electronic devices, including laptops, are turned off. Under no circumstances bringing to college, consume, or be under the influence of drugs and alcohol. To be responsible. And the final one, the one that they said highlights, all those seem quite reasonable, to be responsible and considerate in and out of lessons, always showing respect to all members of the college community as well as the members of our local community. It is disruptive to the flow of lessons and learning of other students to make comments and express controversial opinions which are not relevant to the discussion. Whilst we'll always be open to good, rounded academic discussion, there is a requirement to ensure that respect and tolerance for others is maintained, stay relevant to the discussion, respect the teacher's judgment, use language that is courteous, sensitive, and reflective of the professional environment of the classroom. So that's a contract that Luca got sent. So are you able to say what he said that resulted in him getting sent this? Why was he sort of reprimanded for the things he said? What did he say that was transphobic and anti-Semitic? Anything's anti-Semitic at the moment. Everything.
So both comments were made to the same individual. The anti-Semitic joke, I can't actually remember what that was. But in regards to the transphobia, I believe that was actually a debate between the pair. But again, they'd had good banter. It was kind of their relationship where he stated there was only two genders. So that was the transphobic comment, which is mad that you can get punished for that. Luca refused, as many would, to sign the contract. He plain and simple just refused to sign it. In response to that, the university, the sixth form college, kicked him out. Now,
so he's been expelled.
He's been expelled, and in response to this, we're suing them.
Okay.
So we filed a letter before action recently, basically stating that we're going to be taking you to court for discriminating against me based on my Christian faith. Basically, the belief that there are only two genders, a man and a woman, which is defined in the Bible. And he was stating that as his religious belief, which he's entitled to do so, and they've kicked him out. That's that's discrimination based on a Christian faith, right? And it's obviously also to do with political discrimination as well. So so after filing this letter before action, there has been a tribunal given for the 31st of October, and the deputy head teacher who is involved in this has been fired. But that's not the only thing. So a couple of months before all of this, he was he decided he wanted to become the head of the student union. So there's basically like an election process for this, right? And once you kind of submit the fact you want to become a the leader of the student union, you're meant to give a speech. That's one of their traditions. And so he gave a speech. He thought he did well. A lot of students liked him. He's got a lot of friends up there. He got a massive round of applause, and he didn't get it, right? He thought he'd become their leader of the student union. He didn't get it, right? Now, after his speech, the assistant principal, who has now been fired, emailed Luca's mum to say he was mentally disabled because his speech was like mocking himself, basically making jokes. And the assistant deputy head teacher as well also claimed that no one liked him and they attended him just to mock him. She also wrote an email to his GP. After this,
really?
After this, the student union results came out and he didn't win. Now he's heard talks that he won, and proof actually showed that they fiddled with the results in order to make sure that someone as controversial as him didn't become the leader of the student union. So he is also suing based on those grounds as well.
So he's experiencing then in an early political career vote rigging. Is that what you're saying? You're saying that the vote was rigged to ensure that he didn't become the head of the student union at this sixth form college, and that senior members of staff at this college contacted his parents to say that they were concerned about him. They were concerned about his mental health. They contacted the doctor as well. Just make sure I got that right. Is that what happened?
They basically said he was autistic, and
okay.
We've got undercover audio recordings as well of them calling him autistic. Yeah, he's not.
So, I mean,
by the way, yeah.
I mean, that sounds like if they've done that and if they've recorded him secretly as well, I mean, that's against the law. And I know that for certain because I have a friend who records everyone's phone conversations, including me. I won't mention his name. But so that's against the law to record somebody without their knowledge. And to contact for a college to contact a GP without a parent's consent or involvement, I'm sure that isn't allowed either. So what is Luca doing? What's the situation with the court case?
So the situation with the court case is we've got the tribunal coming up, which is to do with the Christian discrimination. The issue is trying to find a lawyer. So we've contacted multiple legal teams, but a lot of them don't specialize in this kind of cases and won't do it pro bono or on a win basis, if that makes sense. So what we're doing right now is we're trying to find a legal representative who has experience in this sector, primarily maybe someone who's dealt with Christian discrimination cases before, who doesn't charge an excess amount of money, because obviously a lot of us with the cost of living crisis right now are massively struggling to afford anything, let alone to pay massive legal fees. So we've currently we're waiting the tribunal. We've been going back and forwards with the college with legal letters. They are denying most of the claims, but that's to be expected. We have managed to get emails between teachers admitting to most of what has been said above. So yeah, that's basically what's going on right now. And yeah, if anyone would like to support us, our website is studentsagainsttyranny.com.
Okay. And I'll give you a chance to repeat that so that the listeners, if they do want to help or support you, can go to that website. So we'll pick up on that at the end. We're going to a break now, James. When I come back, I'll give you a little bit of my experience, because I'm no longer a teacher because I said there was only two sexes and I was described as an extremist. So I do have some experience on how to push back against that. I won my case, and I'll tell you what I did, and it involves subject data access requests. And I also were interested to know on how many other students have contacted you with these similar or issues similar to this. So please stay right with us. Won't be a sec here on TNT Radio.
You should hear what Steve Hook is talking about.
The story about Kevin McCarthy getting ousted, that'll be gone in a couple of days. But the infight is going to go on. Now, there's a lot of people that are just cheering this on, and this is the message we need to send. And I understand it. I get it. I get the frustration. I get the whole label of, oh, he's a uniparty guy. I don't think that's true, but I get it. He's certainly been around for a while, and you've been around DC for a while, no matter how conservative or how rock solid you are on some of the issues, the stench just kind of starts to get on you. And that certainly happened with McCarthy. He was seen to be willing to work with Democrats, and there's a whole bunch of people, especially conservatives, and I'm talking about voters here, that are absolutely sick to death of business as usual. And by the way, this isn't some new phenomenon. Trump was elected because of this phenomenon back in 2016. So there's a lot of people that are just absolutely furious with DC. I am certainly one of them.
Steve Hook and today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Radio works because of its ability to personalize to the listener.
What's exciting these days is that people are rediscovering it. People are really rediscovering just how powerful radio is, how ubiquitous it is. It's in our cars, it's in our homes. There are so many new ways to access it. It's everywhere.
To find out more, go to tntradio.live. Unbiased information.
Honest and forthright.
News without the misinformation.
It doesn't matter what side you're from. What matters is what you say, the truthfulness behind it.
Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome back to TNT Radio. It's just me, DD Denzo, on a Sunday episode of Digging Deeper. I'm here talking to James Harvey, founder of Students Against Tyranny. And I'm just looking at the live chat here. James, I see that Mally Bites is in the live chat. He's part of the Voice of Wales team, which you are also part of. He said you are a great lad with a good heart. So good complimentary messages there in the live chat for you, James. He also said, don't call you crab sticks. So we may pick up on that as why I'm not allowed to call you crab sticks. And to everyone else in the live chat, to Holly, where is James? Where is this college? It is in Surrey. What else we got? Oh, Jane Black. Excellent guest, Darren. This guest is 100% correct. Good to hear some younger youth understand the agenda ahead. And yes, it gives us hope that there is even an organization set up by young people called Students Against Tyranny. And we need more of this. We need more young people waking up to the agenda and pushing back. James, you said that you had quite a lot of people contact you or contact Students Against Tyrannies with these types of issues. How many people, what type of issues do other people come with you? Are you getting a lot, or is it just some? What's the sort of response and commentary coming your way as part of that organization, mate?
I think in the past 2 weeks, I've probably had about 3 or 4 different students tell me how they've been discriminated against by their university. The most recent one, a good friend, Montgomery Toms, who's also a member of Students Against Tyranny, does a lot of work with us, and we're going to be seeing him on the 18th. So he attends a liberal arts college in London. Now, anyone who knows liberal arts are probably the worst places to find all these left-wing, far-left, socialist, communist activists. And I think he was there for 2 days, and we had an anonymous tip from someone at his university who goes drinking with the lecturers that he'd already been reported for a comment that he never made. So apparently he said that all gay people are pedophiles, which is, I know this person. I've done a lot of work with him. I've known him for about 2 years now. It's not the way he rolls. He's very civilized. He walks around in a suit. He's very articulate, and it's not something that he would say. Well, it turns out a lot of people who go to his university are Antifa, and Antifa, knowing, are very much at odds with Students Against Tyranny. So if they even see a member of Students Against Tyranny at one of their universities, they are going to make up comments like that. I mean, last time you interviewed me about John Christian, and John Christian had exactly that, where his friends or so-called friends would report him for stuff that he never said, just because they were in the heat of the moment, they didn't agree with what he was saying, and so they made up a bunch of more extreme stuff in order to get him punished. And also Antifa at his college have started making memes of him. They threatened to stab him. The person who made the report to us, by the way, who actually told us, listen, he needs to watch himself because people are making reports about him already. That guy turned out to be Antifa, who was trying to infiltrate Students Against Tyranny as well. So we are getting phone calls from people who are being victimized and persecuted, bullied, and punished by the university for so-called wrong thing. And the thing is, a lot of people will ask, well, why does this concern them? As I was mentioning in the beginning of this show, if you look at the Bolshevik Revolution, the Khmer Rouge, every single Marx-inspired revolution, they always recruited students. These communist regimes, these violent communist regimes, were always led out of the universities every single time, right? I mean, in the Khmer Rouge, it was a little bit different because they imprisoned students, but they used other students to imprison these students. They were basically pitted against each other. Yeah. So it's urgent that we fight this on university campuses now, because the radicalization process that is going on. I was doing film and TV in university. I was learning about climate change, socialism. I was learning about transgenderism. I was learning very much progressive politics in a film and TV lesson. Yeah. That's it. This is at a not even that woke college. You go to an extremely woke college, it's exactly the same. There is no university or college in the UK right now that is not woke. None, right? University campuses are ground zero for communist regimes. They are. Yeah. And I mean, again, look at the Bolshevik Revolution or Mao's Cultural Revolution. Students formed paramilitary organizations called the Red Guard. They are learning about these paramilitary organizations in a good light at SOAS University of London. Yeah, at the Marxism Festival of Socialist Ideas. They are taking inspiration from these paramilitary groups. Why do you think that Antifa walk around with masks on in all black with flagpoles that are sharpened at the end? It's because they are taking inspiration from previous communist regimes that went around where they had paramilitary groups roaming the streets, beating people because they were so-called counter-revolutionaries. Or right-wingers, or bad influencers, or rich farmers, or landlords. Yeah. So that's what's going on in universities right now. Look at 15 Minute Cities. That idea was designed by the students at Oxford University. So what's going on right now is a direct result of what is being pushed on students. Usually, it used to be students would go to university, potentially become socialist, but then once they left university, they'd grow out of that because they wanted to keep their own money. There's a bunch of different factors there. But these days, they're not growing out of it because they're never being told no. People are feeding into their delusions. Look at transgenderism. If you disagree with that, you are immediately transphobic, a bigot. You are scientifically wrong, trust the science. When science and the truth is actually on our side. So, which again is to do with ideological subversions, which Yuri Bezmenov, a KGB defector, talks about. Yeah, ideological subversions, the ability to subvert the culture in order to divide and conquer, which again is cultural Marxism, which led directly out the Frankfurt School. So, in my mind, it is urgent, and I'm getting these phone calls nearly every week from people who are having their education taken from them. And you need an education to get a good job these days, by the way, as well, right? They're having their education taken from them because they have an opinion that does not align with the status quo or the mainstream narrative. And we're building up a resistance against this. So if you are a young person who is watching at home, please join us. studentsagainsttyranny.com/join. You can join for free. It's free of charge. And we are building up a massive movement. In the past week, we've probably had about 10 new members, which is good for us, right? We're building up slowly again. So we need your help. We need your help.
Going on, just talk about answer. There's lots that I'm going to try and pick up on there. First of all, I said, what's the best thing that you can do legally? And you've already mentioned it once. It's what I did with my college when I was discriminated against and called a transphobe for believing in two sexes and refusing to call any trans students by their pronouns. I refuse to comply with compelled language. And that's one of the ways that they try to get into the head of students is that they change and force language, which changes thinking. But what I did, and you mentioned it before, was I did an SAR, a subject access request or subject data access request. And trust me, colleges, universities, maybe a bit more well equipped to deal with it, but most colleges are not equipped to deal with a subject data access request. And if you want to see what I asked for, and I went down to the detail of metadata, and I wanted everything, every email, every time my name was mentioned in any form of media through my college, I wanted that email. They very quickly offered me some money to keep my mouth shut, because they knew they couldn't comply with it, and if they did, they would have been found to be banged to rights, so to speak, in terms of the discrimination case that I was putting to them. So that's my advice for you and any student. Anyone who's listening now with any organization, it doesn't have to be a college, it can be the health service, the police, your local council. If you are not happy with how you personally have been treated, and you believe that there may be some form of discrimination going on, then go and stick in a subject data access request. They have 40 days to comply, and they must meet all the criteria in terms of the information they provide to you that you put in that request. It's a very, very powerful legal tool that you can use on a personal level. Antifa. We'll move on to Antifa very quickly. How prevalent, because we don't really see Antifa on the streets quite like we do here in the UK, like we do in the USA, and they've gone a bit quiet. I expect them to get really, really noisy, especially through 2024, because we've got the elections in America coming up again. But how, are there a lot of students in UK universities and colleges and schools that align with or identify themselves as being members of Antifa?
Before I talk about that, could I just briefly touch on something you just said? So shutting down language, the University of Surrey actually recently published a inclusive language guide where you're not allowed to say stuff like black box, black ball, black and blue, dark side, dark web. You can't say anything that's black or dark. Also, something else you can do legally is the office there was recently a bill passed called the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Bill that would allow the Office for Students to levy fines on universities that are infringing on their students' rights to free speech. We haven't seen this enacted yet, but if you send an email to them, they should in theory and legally fine the university for infringing on your free speech. So that is something else you can do. In regards to Antifa, I mean, you know from last time we've organised protests in Manchester where we had 250 Antifa come out against us, all of which are students of that university. If you go to their Instagram page, you can see rent strikes, so where they were striking, not paying their student rent, and they were being dragged out by their arms and legs by the landlords. So there is a massive presence of Antifa on universities, primarily among the woker areas like Manchester. Where's another good one? So if you want to go Imperial College, all the liberal arts colleges in London have them. If you go into
Plymouth University, I will put money on that Plymouth University, where I am, is one of the wokest universities in the country. I mean, it's super woke, and we have Antifa graffiti and tags in Plymouth, but I've never really seen them come together as a group in the city centre to protest for anything. But, we're quite quiet down here. Anyway, sorry, carry on. I was doing a one-upmanship with universities. Really.
Well, we've got a ranking coming out soon. It's typically something you'll find as well is that the universities with where you do like sciences and engineering, and that's the only thing you study at those universities, they're actually very low in terms of Antifa. Now, the reason is because a lot of people just want to go into university, get their diploma, go out, get a job. They don't have time for Antifa. But you go to an extremely woke university where it's primarily liberal arts or creativity, there's a very high chance that university has Antifa there. Very much higher chance. Because I was speaking to a teacher yesterday who said that he works in the science department. No one really cares because he ran for UKIP as a councillor. No one really cared. The student union put out an article about it, but in its lessons, no one really cared about it. The thing is, if you go to a university where they're just studying that, you're not going to get a high level of Antifa. Whereas you go to a university like Manchester, where they do all the liberal arts as well, you're definitely going to get a lot more Antifa. And there is a lot of Antifa. There's also something called the Youth Communist League. They march around with their red masks and their red flags. Looks like something out of Mao's Cultural Revolution. And there's about 550 of them in the UK. So you can read online in their electoral register, because they're a registered party, aren't they? Part of the British Communist Party. And there's 550 young people who are members of it as of 2021.
Yeah, I stood against that Communist Party in the local elections in April. They didn't do very well. Yeah, so they might have 550 members, but that's probably all the votes that they're going to get across the country if they ever stood. So fortunately, they're not too much of a threat to our democracy at the moment. But what you've been describing, James, is the long, and you mentioned Yuri Bezmenov and his active measures. What you've described is the long march through the institutions, and it's been going on for 2 decades, 3 decades, longer than that still. And the problem we've got is the students who 20 years ago were being indoctrinated. They're now the teachers at university. Yeah. And now, and so we've got multiple generations now filling up with these communist, leftist, socialist ideals. And one of them, changing the subject, mate, is because you've mentioned Manchester University, and I went and found a story just for you. Manchester University's Alan Gilbert building painted orange by Just Stop Oil protesters. The protesters were arrested shortly afterwards by Greater Manchester Police. So this is Just Stop Oil. They've gone in and sprayed a painting with orange paint, etc., in protest to climate change. We've talked about Antifa. How many Just Stop Oil climate activists do you come across in the university higher education setting? And how hard is climate change being pushed at university?
I have absolutely zero sympathy for any university that is dealing with them. Like there was I think King's College in Cambridge also got sprayed with orange paint as well. Absolutely zero for sympathy. And I'll tell you why. It's because they encourage it. If they're going to be waving LGBTQ flags down the corridors or hosting speakers from Just Stop Oil, which a lot of them do, by the way, they host speakers from Just Stop Oil, they are encouraging woke behavior. They are basically saying, yeah, it's okay if you do this, but they're humoring the what these far left people do, because they vandalize buildings, don't they? BLM setting buildings on fire. You have Just Stop Oil spraying paint over buildings, throwing mashed potatoes over paintings. Yeah, they are encouraging this behavior. And by encouraging this behavior, they're reaping what they sow. And so they're going to deal with far left students who want to spray their buildings with orange paint, because that is the kind of behavior they are encouraging by promoting it. So I have absolutely zero sympathy for any university that does this. Now, something else that really annoys me is when in university lectures, they state climate change as if it is a fact. It's not a fact. It's a theory. It's a theory that hasn't been proven, hasn't been substantiated by evidence. That's all it is. It's a theory, right? I think it's 130 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere. All life on Earth dies. We're at 150 parts per million. Yeah, we need more carbon in the atmosphere. The science is on our side on this. But these universities, they won't host speakers such as Paul Burgess, who's a climate expert, or Piers Corbyn, right? They won't host speakers like that because because it goes against their narrative. So yeah, climate change is a big thing that's being pushed in universities right now. They are stating it as a fact, even though it's not a fact. I mean, again, I'm doing film and TV. Well, I was doing film and TV until I got kicked out. And in my in those film and TV lessons, we were learning about climate change. We were told to do video reports on climate change from a perspective that climate change exists, even though, again, it's a theory. So that's what's going on in universities. They are teaching it as a fact. Students are obviously the reason that a lot of students become radicalized to this extent to join in terrorist organizations like Antifa is because they are told that climate change is an urgent issue that needs addressing, otherwise we're all going to die. When you tell a bunch of young, impressionable people that, they are obviously going to become radical because they in their mind, it's an urgent cause they need to fight for, otherwise they're going to die. So in order to achieve that, a violent revolution is needed. That's their mindset. They are radicalizing young people with this ideology. I mean, the first step to radicalization is poverty, obviously, but one of the second steps is crisis. And again, Yuri Bezmenov talked about it, didn't he? In the 4 stages of ideological subversion. So we have demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and then normalization, right? Which is pretty much like problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem, force people to react, then they come up with the solution they wanted all along.
And we are actually currently, in my estimation, in the crisis stage. I don't know how long it's going to go for. We've had COVID, we've had Russia, Ukraine, we had Brexit and Trump before all of that. That sort of set it all up, didn't it? That set up that fear and anxiety in society. And normalization is probably going to come. I don't know. I'm going to pick a date out of thin air. maybe from 2030 onwards, just a guess. I'm sure there's an agenda that's heading towards that date. You mentioned about speakers. I've got one more very quick story before we go to a break, James. The Uni of Edinburgh has once again been accused by a trade union of hosting an event which contests the legitimacy of trans people and their rights. What they have got is they have got somebody to come in to do an event which is an anthology of essays titled Sex and Gender, a Contemporary Reader. So they've got people coming into the University of Edinburgh. They're not coming in to put trans people down. They're just basically saying there are only two sexes. There are a whole load of activists in Edinburgh now pushing back, saying that they condemn these speakers in these essays and this shouldn't take place. In your experience and from what contact you've had with other students around the country, how many speakers are being cancelled or having events pulled because of a backlash from the left, from Antifa, from the commies in university? How much is that still going on, do you know?
I'd say, well, I mean, even with the Uni of Edinburgh, for the first time, they actually cancelled that screening, and then they decided to do it again for the second time, and they faced against again an extensive opposition from the far left because they humour that kind of behaviour. It's most of them. I mean, there was Kathleen Stock at Oxford University, where luckily the Free Speech Union, the debating society there, is separate of the actual university. Otherwise, the university would have cancelled it. So yeah, I mean, most universities don't have a debating society or free speech society, so they can't even get in controversial guests. Look at Bradford Student Union, for example, doesn't have anything like that, but they have an Afghanistan society, so that's helpful. So yeah, the majority of universities, they won't, like for example, Tommy Robinson, right? Most universities wouldn't even give them the time of day anymore, right? The Oxford Union did years ago, but these days, most universities, they would not have him in. I've tried to get into universities to speak to students. None of them want me. Absolutely none of them want me. And a lot of them say it's because you're too controversial. So yeah, the majority of universities are cancelling speakers for being too controversial. Kathleen Stock was a big example of that. They caused massive fights among the administration and kind of a wave among the UK academia. So yeah, the majority of universities are cancelling speakers.
Yeah, and it's shocking. And there has been sort of legislation put in place by this so-called Conservative government to prevent restrictions on free speech and who can speak at universities, and the ability for universities to prevent people coming to speak to students. But I suspect that legislation is just being ignored. All right, we're going to a quick break now, James. When we come back, now we've got a controversial subject, really controversial subject. We may not even agree. I don't know. Israel and Hamas, you are a young person, and I'm very, very interested to know what your take is on these recent events in the Middle East. So please stay right with us. We'll be back in a sec here on TNT Radio.
Give me a minute with TNT Radio's Steve Malzberg.
If you're a betting person, you probably study the odds and point spreads. But you know nothing is actually a sure thing except this. The world will turn against Israel. The media already has. Now, on the surface, the Biden administration has been rock solid in their support of Israel. But for all the rhetoric, this line by Joe Biden on Wednesday speaks volumes. Listen.
Very frank relationship. I know him well. And the one thing that I did say, that it is really important that Israel, all the anger, frustration, and just I don't know how to explain it, that exists, is that they operate by the rules of war. The rules of war. And there are rules of war.
Rules of war against Nazis who mutilate civilians and use their own people as human shields. I give it 2 days after Israel goes into Gaza before the Biden folks start repeating that line over and over again. Thanks for giving me a minute. I'm Steve Malzberg for TNT Radio.
Challenging the consensus and debunking the narrative. This is Viewpoint.
Governments around the world are wasting billions of dollars in carbon capture and storage. Such programs are futile and opposite the benefit of enhanced photosynthesis for a greener world and improved crop yields. In November 2021, US President Joe Biden approved the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which allocated $12.2 billion over 5 years for carbon capture, utilization, and storage, the single largest appropriation of money for the technology in history. Other nations and many of the largest multinational corporations support this folly. Much of the funding goes to geosequestration, which requires vast amounts of energy to pump carbon dioxide deep underground into geological formations. The enormous costs have no benefit, and there's no guarantee the gas won't leak out over time with seismic events. Likewise, carbon stored in forestry projects can go up in smoke in a bushfire.
Dee Denslow is digging deeper on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
Welcome back to TNT. Yes, you're here with me, Dee Denslow. James Harvey, a young man who started Students Against Tyranny, doing a lot of good work. I want you to think of why you're called crab sticks, James. We'll come to that at the end of the show, so that's something for you to think about. But I would like to know, and we were just talking, me, you, and the studio here at TNT about the Israel conflict. I have never seen such craziness on social media. I have seen people who I trusted and respected turn into absolute monsters, and people who I'd never ever would ever agree with. All of a sudden, I find myself agreeing with opinions of people who, you know, might think that there are more than two sexes. So what the hell is going on? Either way, it's very terrible, the events. Hamas should be condemned. Yeah, absolutely, for their vile acts. But at the same time, if you're going to do that, we should also be condemning, in my opinion, Israel for their response and for the behavior that may well have led to these attacks in the first place. As much as I don't like necessarily saying that, before I dig a hole for myself, James, what's your opinion on the events in the Middle East over the last sort of 8-9 days?
First thing I want to stress is that the first thing to go during war is truth. So from Palestine and Israel, whatever is coming out, how do we know any of it's true? I mean, we saw the other day babies allegedly being killed in Israel, bombing of civilians and, you know, civilian targets and all of that in Palestine. The thing is, I mean, there was footage that was used from a couple of years ago on one of the news reports that I saw. So what I want is that I just want people to stop killing each other. You know, I don't care about who is in the right or who is in the wrong in the Israel-Palestine conflict. To be honest, there's enough things that's going on in the UK right now, and everyone, and I mean everyone, is just so incredibly divided on this topic. You've got the far right, who I thought, the real far right anyway, who I thought were very anti-Islam, are now siding with Palestine in this conflict and hating on the Jews, which I guess kind of makes sense. Then you've got people like Tommy, Katie Hopkins, who are coming out in support of Israel, which again I understand with Tommy, because Tommy's always been anti-Islam, and he's been very anti-Hamas, because Hamas are like a watered down ISIS. They're pretty much like the Muslim Brotherhood. But then Tommy and Katie's views are the same as that of the BBC's. So it seems everyone is kind of massively divided on this topic. And as I said a minute ago, the first thing to go in times of war is truth. So you've got people like Ben Shapiro who are sharing footage that isn't true, isn't accurate. And it's not just in terms of Israel, it's on both sides of the spectrum. But I mean, I do condemn Hamas. I do also condemn Mossad as well, who's the Israeli intelligence service. So, I mean, they're both as bad as each other. What's going on right now? I mean, I've seen arguments for why Israel belongs to the Jews. I mean, in the Bible, it did say that, you know, the Holy Land, the Kingdom of Judea, was promised to the Jews, and I mean that predated the existence of Palestine. But the Bible also says, "Be wary of those who say they are Jews but are not Jews," which, you know, I think I kind of guess which is where the Rothschilds come into play, potentially, right? So I see bads coming from both sides, and I'm not taking a side, because Students Against Tyranny has never been about that, and I know how divisive it is for everyone. And so the thing is, let's not be divided. This is part of the crisis stage. This is part of the crisis stage. They want us all divided as people, and the reason they want us divided is so they can conquer us. They can implement new policies such as the online safety bill, and no one will batter an eyelid because everyone's too busy fighting amongst each other about who is in the right in the Israeli-Palestine conflict. So what I'm going to say is to everyone who's watching at home, don't let yourself be divided by this. Don't fall into their trap. Don't fall into their game of taking sides. I am going to say I am very concerned, though, that I've seen thousands upon thousands of Palestinians roaming the streets in London, and they are thirsty for blood. Yep. They are thirsty for blood. That is I'm very concerned about that. There was a video I sent you earlier of a Jewish man in a wheelchair who has to be given a police escort through London right now. So I am very concerned for the future of this country and for the future of our children. But don't be divided on this topic. Yeah.
Yep. I think very wise words, James. Yeah. And I think everybody who's listening right now should take heed to what you have just said. And the key point is, don't take a side. Don't pick a side. That's what they want. That's the media presence in our lives. They want you to pick a side, and they will use language and narratives and storylines to feed both sides and create that division and that conflict between people. And in regards to the events in London yesterday, it's not often that I don't comment on protests, but I didn't yesterday because my head's spinning with everything that's going on. I've got like World War III alarm bells going off in the background. But the same people who started this conflict in the Middle East, because I believe this has got false flag written all over it. I believe that Israel is going to try and exterminate as much of Gaza as it can and take the land. I think that's what's going to happen. And that isn't the Jews. That's the bad actors like Netanyahu who are in charge. And I believe there was some sort of false flag element. The attack was allowed to happen so that they could attack Gaza. And the reason the people who are responsible for that are the same people who are responsible for flooding the West with people who don't belong here, many of which will have been roaming the streets yesterday shouting support for Hamas. Yeah, and we mustn't mix up Hamas and the Palestinian people. They are two. We've got to keep them separate. Well, it's like saying everybody in England is a conservative because we've got a conservative party here, or it's like the UK bombing Northern Ireland because of the actions of the IRA. Yeah, and that's what's happening in the Middle East. But there's people responsible for that are the same people who have flooded our country. And you are right. We are very likely to see terrorist attacks, whether genuine or false flags. We're probably going to see them right across the West, and we should be concerned about that, James.
Yeah, too right. I mean, there's a few things about that. It is interesting, right? We've got mass immigration into the UK right now. All of those people are voting for Labour. All of those people support Palestine. All of those people hate Jews. Not just the Jews, they hate whites. They call us infidels. But then again, the Jews also call us Goya. So it's again, there's bads on both sides of the spectrum. And I am seeing everyone have massive disagreements about this. Massive. And I mean, you're right there as well. Hamas and Palestine, let's not conflate the two here. Hamas and the Palestinian people, let's not conflate the two here, right? They are two separate things. The Palestinian people are being kept poor by Hamas. The UN has sent millions upon millions of pounds to Hamas. Not a single school has been built. They haven't come out of poverty. They're still exactly the same way they were, 10, 15 years ago as they are now. Yeah, they are being kept poor by Hamas, who they did democratically elect. They did elect ISIS, because they are pretty much ISIS. They did elect them. But after they were elected, after Hamas were elected to govern the area, that's when they said, right, we're doing no more elections. So they are as innocent as, the Chinese people in all of this. It's like, in China now, all the people are subject to communist rule. It's pretty much like that. They're all subjected to ISIS rule. But obviously, again, the thing is, a lot of those people who flee Palestine, for example, to come into the UK where they're not governed by Hamas or Sharia law, they come to the UK and then they set up Sharia courts, and then they start advocating for Hamas-like beliefs against gay people or whatever. So it's again they're putting themselves in the trap, aren't they?
Yeah. And what's going to happen when Israel has finished carpet bombing and going into it's going to be like Bakhmut for the Israelis when they go into Gaza. It's going to be like a meat grinder for them. There's going to be a lot of Jews, unfortunately, are going to die if they go into to Gaza, and a lot of Palestinians are going to die. There's going to be a lot of bloodshed. So I think we should resolve that first. Stop the killing. And I think, as I can see coming through on the live chat right now, people are agreeing with you, James, and your wise words, and definitely wise, probably beyond your years, my friend. And then finally, because we're coming to the end now, because I want to know, I'm sure everyone who's listening now wants to know, why did Mally Bites, one of the guys in the live chat, call you crab sticks? We've got 1 minute. You got 1 minute to explain.
All right, 1 minute. Okay, got it. So I went on a hike over Brecon Beacons for 3 days. It managed to do 70 miles. This was to raise money for Voice of Wales. During this time, I got massively sunburnt. The back of my legs were completely red, but the front of them were white. And so they started calling me crab sticks. Another nickname that's been given to me is, this is going to be offensive, is Auschwitz, because I look like an Auschwitz victim.
So you're red, young, and skinny. I think we were all like that when we were younger. James, thanks for coming on the show today. I think you've actually done yourself very, very proud, and you should give yourself a pat on the back when you go away. And the audio for this, so you can share it to your various networks, will be with you at some point tomorrow morning. I appreciate you coming on. I think everybody in the live chat is giving you a round of applause. So take care, my friend. Thanks for coming on, and keep those legs red. Cheers.